here. Hello, my name is Amber Abila. I am a binge eating and overeating coach. We have coffee chats every single Tuesday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 12 Central, 1 Eastern, wherever you are in the world. And this is a way for you to get a free little mini training on a topic. I choose every week something relating to healing your relationship with food, your body. And I like to make them interactive. So I love if you can participate, if you're able to speak, if you're able to write in the chat, whatever's available to you. If you just want to listen along, that's okay too. So after I go through our free mini training, then we're going to go into really just any questions you have for me. We can do any open coaching, anything you've been wondering about, anything you've been stuck. I know it can feel really lonely in your journey with food and sometimes really confusing too with all the various advice and things out there. So before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this Thursday, meaning in 2 days, I'm teaching a free masterclass. So the difference between a coffee chat and a masterclass is just that it's a little bit more, a masterclass is a little bigger, a little more official. We're gonna have slides. I'm teaching it with another coach as well. So that's gonna be this Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 Eastern. And so I'd love to have you there. It's totally free. The link is in the chat. And we're talking about how to stop emotional eating and how to manage your emotions. So if you struggle with emotional eating, or you feel like you don't have any tools for your emotions that are working, you're definitely going to want to check that out. All right, so today we're going to be talking about what should we call foods instead of healthy or unhealthy? How do we label foods? So I would like to first know what labels you have used in the past or currently for your foods. How have you described them? How have you labeled them? How have you talked about foods in the past? Put it in the chat or feel free to unmute.
I would say, bad foods, calorie intensive foods, stuff
Mhm.
like that.
And I'm curious, especially with the calorie intensive one, is there any drama or certain thoughts associated with that?
It's anxiety provoking. Just afraid to eat foods that are bad.
Mhm.
Some
Yeah.
foods are healthy. But yeah, I mean, there's in general, right? There's good and bad foods, I would say, for me.
Yeah, so the label good, bad, healthy, unhealthy, unhealthy. We have evil too in the chat. All of these labels. And why I asked you if, especially the calorie laden one, the calorie filled one, had any thoughts associated to it is because it's true. Some foods do have more calories. Some foods are more calorie dense compared to others, but that doesn't have to mean anything necessarily. It could just be a fact, right? Just like some things cost more than other things. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. It just is a number that can exist.
Amber, I
Yeah.
always thought about foods as either foods you ate when you were dieting and foods you ate or that you could eat when you weren't dieting. So that it was based on you, if you were trying to lose weight, you didn't eat these foods, and if you weren't, have at it.
Mm-hmm. Right, like on track food and off track foods. If I'm eating these foods, it means I'm being on the diet and we're on the right path. And I'm eating these foods, I'm off track, we're going off the rails, we're saying YOLO and just continue on this off path, right?
Right. And labeling ourselves good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm being good, so I'm eating these foods, or I'm being bad and I'm eating these. So it's not only labeling the food, but ourselves in accordance to what we eat.
Right.
At least that was my case.
Yeah, totally. So whatever these labels are, whether it's good, bad, healthy or unhealthy, safe, unsafe, okay foods and off limits foods, junky foods, crappy foods, clean foods, and like mean, who decided foods were clean and dirty? Like, I think that one always makes me laugh because it's like, this is a clean food. Like, okay, you washed it with soap and water or something. Like, no, like all foods are safe for us to eat to some degree if they are digestible in our body. We also have some foods make me feel sick. You have a sensitive stomach. Those are bad for your body, but you miss them. So, you know, they have an effect on your body, right? Those foods make you feel a certain way. All foods make us feel a certain way. Anytime we're ingesting something, it's going to make us feel a certain way. It's going in our body. So sure, those foods have an effect on your body. Labeling some foods as bad for your teeth or bad for your bones, okay? So in particular, I think out of all these labels, the worst one is definitely the good, bad type of one, because like you mentioned, these ones bring in the morality of this makes me a good person and now I'm a bad person. And that makes it a little bit deeper to our core. We think I've done something bad, or someone will say, oh my gosh, I've been so bad this weekend. Do you want to be bad with me and get the dessert? Oh, the holidays are coming up. Guess we're going to be bad. Like all of those things that starts to take into account who we are as a person. We're being a bad person because we're having cookies at Christmas, right? So that can take it a layer deeper and add some even more additional guilt, shame, fear, emotions attached to it. So whatever these labels are, you might start to realize logically, knowing that these labels probably aren't super helpful. I want you to get curious. What's your experience been so far when you've had these labels? What does your eating look like when you call foods good and bad? Does it look different than if you're just saying, you know, I'm just going to try to eat things in moderation? How does it look when you're trying to be in the diet mentality of we're being good, we're being bad, on track, off track? So you might be at the point where you logically know, okay, I want to get away from these labels. I want to stop calling these foods, putting them in these categories. But how do we describe our foods then? What are we going to call them? Most of us don't know because we've grown up with diet culture so strongly in our history of eating. This also comes up for a lot of people if you have kids. I know when I coach moms or dads and they have children, they often think, well, how am I supposed to teach my kids this? There are good foods, there are bad foods. This food's too sugary and unhealthy, and I need to let them know that. But then they realize, oh, this is the mindset that I grew up with and probably why the way I am around food. So maybe we want to shift that. And so you can think about if you have kids, maybe applying what we're going to talk about today to them as well. So the problem with these categories is it forces our brain to think in dichotomies. And what a dichotomy is creating two options, right? A lot of these only had two options. I don't think any of these labels had like 5 different options of bad, a little bad, medium bad, a little good, very good, right? Like it's usually very two-sided, this way or that way, right? All or nothing, black and white, these two options. And we're artificially creating these two options with our thoughts. There's not actually a factual category of the world that exists for healthy and unhealthy, right? I'm sure we can all start to think of some foods that might fall in both categories, or, you know, people are undecided about which category it might fall into. So it's just something we create in our mind. Now, the reason we create these categories is because it's easier for our brain to think about them in this way. It's harder for your brain to think on a spectrum, right? Our brain doesn't really work in sliding scales. Our brain is trying to be efficient and fast and make quick decisions, because in the old days, that would mean better survival. We can get things done quickly. So it makes these two categories and it doesn't sit there thinking philosophically about the nuances of things every day. But the problem again is this is just not how food works. This is not the way the world works. This is thinking that gets in our way all the time. Deciding there are only two options. I either get divorced or I stay married. I either have to do this thing for my friend or I'm not going to do it for them. They're going to hate me forever, right? Like all of our brains will go to these false two options in so many different areas of our life. So I'm curious, can you guys think of any foods, again, that either come up for you currently or maybe in the past, where you thought you could say, yes, this food is for sure healthy, or this food is for sure unhealthy? just to test out this theory, can we say if there's any foods for sure that are unhealthy or for sure healthy?
You know, vegetables are usually healthy.
Mhm,
Most vegetables.
mhm,
Ice cream is generally unhealthy.
mhm. We've got vegetables. Is there a certain amount of vegetables that's healthy? Is there ever such thing as too many vegetables?
Um, some vegetables like potatoes and stuff, there's only so much you could, I mean, you could probably eat like a whole bunch of broccoli and be fine, I think. But you could eat a lot of vegetables, I think,
Mhm.
and that would be healthy.
I knew someone who ate so many carrots that they turned orange.
I was gonna ask, who here has ever eaten so much broccoli that they were gassy the next day? The
Oh,
next night? That could be eating too much. You can eat too many carrots, right? My guess is they probably had too much vitamin A, right? They got too much vitamin A in their system, or what is it called? The carotenoids in carrots. They had too many of those, and then they started turning orange because they had an abundance of it, right? So even something like vegetables, we could have too much of, right? And I like to consider this. Let's say, something maybe like spinach or broccoli or carrot, something we'd say, yeah, I feel like these are pretty good vegetables. If we only ate vegetables all day long, we would be unhealthy because then we'd be missing out on protein, we'd be missing out on fat, we'd be missing out on other nutrients and essential vitamins. And so even though we'd be eating healthy, we'd be eating vegetables all day, we wouldn't actually be feeling good because we'd be eliminating space for other things in our body too. All right, we have anything with fake sugar, with raw sugar, anything with fake sugar being bad, soda, things that might be healthy, carrots, broccoli, unhealthy, Lay's chips. Like how I said Lay's chips in particular. Use one brand of chips. And my guess, you probably heard that somewhere, saw something that Lay's chips are really bad. So also question where all these labels came from. Did you inherently know them or were they taught to you? Did you have an experience with this food? Did you go on a diet that gave you a list of that these were the bad foods and these were the good foods? How did you decide whether this food was healthy or not healthy? So the truth is all foods exist on a spectrum, right? It is not only like a linear spectrum, but I think foods exist on like a three-dimensional spectrum, right? Because we can't say there's a scale of healthy and unhealthy and some fall here, some fall there, because for some people, something like dairy could be really healthy and useful. One of my clients, she was recommended by her doctor. She has some bone issues, so she has to have a specific amount of dairy every day that she eats. And then other people have a sensitivity to dairy and they feel horrible when they eat dairy. So dairy would not be healthy for them. Some people look at the food pyramid, which by the way is funded by the dairy industry, and they say dairy is healthy. Look, the government says it's healthy. And then then there's a lot of alternative research that it's not. And so it's very nuanced, right? So we can't even put it on a spectrum of, oh, it's kind of healthy here and kind of not healthy here. And then it also comes down to amounts. If you have one bite of cheese, maybe it's fine for you. But maybe if you binge an entire pint of ice cream, it starts to hurt. So not only is calling things healthy or good not necessarily helpful, it can just be flat out wrong. So a few other examples, something like bananas, right? Who here has heard bananas have too much carbs, they're too sugary. And then who here has also heard bananas are a good source of potassium. They're good to eat, right? They're delicious. They're a good option for dessert. Good with peanut butter, right? And same thing with spinach. It's like us, eating spinach is good. But if you were only to eat spinach all day, you wouldn't be very healthy. And just eating a serving of spinach is not going to make you healthy, right? That alone, eating vegetables alone does not make you healthy because health is a very dynamic, complicated thing that includes hundreds of different factors, thousands of different factors, right? Are you sleeping well? Are you really stressed? If you're not sleeping well, and if you are really stressed, you're probably not very healthy right now. So it includes more than just what we eat too. Right now, we might say something like gummy bears or candies. Those are unhealthy. But there are people, when they're running, they have these little goos or they'll bring gummy bears with them that are pure sugar. It is literally just sugar because their body needs that refined carbs for their run. If they were to eat broccoli on their run, they would get a stomach ache because their body would cramp up. It's too much fiber for what they need then. So it's good for them to have those high sugar things. They want those things. They buy those things. And even if we say, okay, I'm not a runner, I'm not really needing that quick hit of carbs, I just sit at my desk all day, these foods can bring you joy. Maybe you love gummy bears. I think gummy bears taste like plastic. So I don't know why I'm using this example. I don't like gummy bears, but maybe you do. Maybe you like gummy bears and maybe they bring you joy. And feeling joy, feeling pleasure, feeling happiness is also a big part of health. Look at any research on stress and you will see how much of an impact stress has on our body, how horrible it can be and how much our systems shut down when we are stressed. So also when we are stressed over these foods, oh my gosh, am I being good? Am I bad? Am I going off diet? I ate this thing. I feel so guilty. All of that additional food stress is also having a very negative impact on your health and your body. So let's think of another example outside of food. TV, for example. Is TV healthy or unhealthy? Right? I'd love to hear from you first before I give you my thoughts and opinions. Is TV healthy or unhealthy? Is it good for you or bad for you?
Probably depends on how much TV.
Depends on how much.
Mhm.
In moderation. And how do you know if it's too much?
Probably if your house isn't getting cleaned, your meals aren't getting prepared, clothes aren't washed. I'm just looking at it from a housewife's point of view, but you know, when the necessities of life aren't getting done because you're watching TV, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Then that's probably too much.
Right. And depending on what you watch,
Hmm.
Are you watching an educational documentary? Or are you watching Keeping Up the Kardashians? That's what I like. I like both. Right. But so look at the nuances. We go, is TV, is it healthy or unhealthy? Well, it depends. If I sit down and watch an episode of my favorite show, maybe it's good for me because it brings me joy and pleasure and I get to relax. I get to feel happy that I'm relaxing. Maybe you connect with your spouse, your partner over TV or a friend. They come over, they watch The Bachelor with you every Monday night. And it's really fun and it gives you joy because it's a way of connecting with people. So notice how nuanced something like this is, but we don't give that same nuance to food. We say, nope, for sure this is healthy or for sure this is unhealthy. I want you to start thinking about it like something like TV of like, well, depends. How much am I having? How much am I watching? Right? Is this creating a very noticeable negative impact on my life? Right? Or if I have a couple squares of chocolate or a little bit of ice cream, maybe I feel fine. Maybe it doesn't impact me that much. Maybe it brings me joy and I just move on and I feel satisfied. Right? So looking at all of these options. Right? Yeah. So there's a lot of like, depends. Is this happening? Is this happening? You know, what are the contexts of this? So use that same deciphering with your food too. So here's what we're going to do to change these labels instead. If you should want to label it, because I know sometimes we're trying to describe our food and we need to put a label on it just for linguistic purposes. I would recommend, calling something, a little bit more nutritious, a little less nutritious. Like we could safely say in general, carrots are a little more nutritious than cake, right? But not one is fully nutritious and one is not nutritious. They both have something to offer us in different ways. I also kind of like the word fuel foods, right? Calling this is a food that fuels me, right? Having an apple with peanut butter is going to fuel me a little bit more than a candy bar might right now because it's going to stick with me longer. It's going to give me sustained energy. It's going to fill my hunger. So it's a fuel food. You can also think about it maybe as a treat food. I don't love the term treat food, but if you need something to call it, maybe this is more of a fuel food. This is more of a treat food. And ultimately, if you can, I'd recommend just getting rid of the labels altogether. and just calling foods with what they are. Just calling cake, cake, calling broccoli, broccoli, calling ice cream, ice cream, just call it what it is, right? Peanut butter, it's just crushed up peanuts. Peanut butter is a fat source. Peanut butter is a spread. Chips can be a snack. Chips can be a side dish to a sandwich, right? Bread is a vehicle for sandwiches and other spreads, right? Calling it very factual. Get out of the drama of what these labels might mean and what it is, and just say, this is what it is, because it's always nuanced. Right? Nobody gained weight or developed diabetes from one M&M. That's not how it works, right? It's this consistent overconsumption of it. And we can't even define overconsumption. I can't say, oh, well, once you start eating a bag of M&Ms a day, then you're for sure going to get diabetes. I'm sure there are some very healthy, lean people out there, maybe love their M&Ms. They have a bag of M&Ms every single day. They feel great about it, and that's what they have. That's their little treat food. And they eat it within their body's limits. Right? And not overeating on it, going too full with it. All right, so who wants coaching or has any questions, any thoughts, anything coming up for them?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the opportunity. You know, something that's been coming up for me sometimes late at night, you know, this is usually like the last hour or so before bed. I'm standing in the kitchen and I'm trying to be more aware of hunger, whether I'm truly hungry or if I'm thinking about food for other reasons. And one thing I find confusing is differentiating that feeling of anxiety with the feeling of hunger. Whereas like kind of like a feeling like in your stomach, like a physical anxiety reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like, I don't know, if I'm hungry, I think I might be hungry, maybe I'll eat. But do you have any advice for trying to really understand um, uh, that in that situation?
Yeah, so think of a time you felt anxious before. You don't have to share with me what it is, but I want you to think of a very specific moment, not, oh, my work makes me anxious. That's too big. I want you to think of a specific moment recently where you felt anxiety, where you felt this feeling, right? Someone said something, you saw something very specific in particular. You got something?
Yeah.
Okay. In that moment, what did you notice physically in your body? How did it feel when you felt that anxiety?
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, I mean I do feel something in my body sometimes, but it can be really close to hunger. But I think I get what you're saying. In addition to that, I actually have other symptoms besides just my I feel different in other ways too, I think.
So pause, go back to that moment, that very specific moment. You felt some things in your body when you felt that anxiety. Where specifically in your body were you feeling those sensations?
Well, I definitely feel tense in my neck and my shoulders.
Okay.
Um, and I could feel a little bit in my belly and my stomach, but I think I don't know if you were intending to make this point, but to me now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, when I'm anxious, I actually have some additional symptoms. Like when I'm hungry, my neck doesn't get tense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that actually is a really good way to think about it.
Yes, and that's what I was getting at, right? And we could go deeper in with this. Like I asked you how it, where it felt specifically in your body. You can ask if that anxiety had a color? Did it have a shape? Did it have a texture, a temperature? All of these really descriptive words. And then the next time you're hungry, that you know you're hungry, you know, maybe it's been 5 or 6 hours since you've eaten, you're ready for dinner, you're ready for lunch. I want you to pause and check in with that feeling. What color is that? Where do you notice those sensations? Does it look like something, like a shape, or you know, you get an image when you feel that hunger? Like, get really specific on those sensations so you can start to distinguish one. And you made a really great observation there. When I'm anxious, I feel it in my neck. I feel it in my my neck, my shoulders, right? That kind of like that feeling of it. You're not going to feel hunger in your neck and shoulders. At least no one I've experienced has felt hunger in their neck and shoulders. Sometimes maybe in the little bit of their throat or their chest, but that can be a really clear symptoms. If you feel that tension, tensing up, could be anxiety. Also looking for if you can find that clear connection to that anxiety, right? How I asked you to find that very specific moment. So if you feel, you know, this comes to being mindful and aware in our day to day. So when you feel something happening, you know, someone says something to you, you see something happening and you feel that anxiety, notice that. So you can put a little flag to it, a little pin, and say, okay, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to breathe through it. But just so you can be aware that that's happening, and then you can label it as anxiety and not hunger.
Okay, that's really cool. Thanks for the advice. I like that.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking the question. All right, question from the chat. How do you know your body's limits for foods that you're sensitive to but would enjoy sometimes? Well, you kind of answered your question. So what does your body tell you is its limit when you eat food that you're sensitive to but enjoy sometimes? Right? So if something, I'm just going to say dairy. I don't know what yours is, but that's something that comes up for a lot of people. If it's dairy, at what point does your body start to have a symptom? Because for some people, you can enjoy it sometimes. Sometimes there's different types of dairy. Maybe you can enjoy cheese, but you can't, ice cream isn't tolerated so well. Look at it as a big experiment. I would keep some sort of food diary or log and track your symptoms, right? So write down, you know, I had my medium-sized bowl of ice cream at home, and I noticed I felt fine after. I noticed I went to sleep fine, or I had this medium-sized bowl of ice cream and oh my gosh, my stomach was cramping for hours. Then you use that information to inform your next decision. All right, let's try having 1 scoop of ice cream or that half bowl of ice cream and just seeing. Now we're coming to the end here, but this is something that I've worked with people before on, is how to deal when you have food restrictions in a way that are, you know, true. You get a response in your body that is really painful, some sort of big sensitivity. I'm going to put the link in the chat to book a free consultation with me. If you were interested in coaching with me, I have private coaching, I have group coaching. The group is closed right now, but I am starting to open up enrollment for the group early. So I could give you special access if you're interested in the group too. But this is something we can discuss because I know sometimes that if you're like, you know, again, let's pretend you have a sensitivity to dairy. Sometimes that can feel restrictive to say no to ourselves, especially if we have a background of eating disorders and eating issues. Our brain's really sensitive to that word no, right? And it can kind of freak out. And sometimes it can feel like we're going back to these disordered eating behaviors when really, if we have this sensitivity, if you're noticing very clear physical symptoms from your body, the least restrictive thing we can do is to cut down on that, because that's going to give you back your joy in life. That's going to give you back a better feeling in your body. That's going to let you go out and live the life you want to live. So we want to figure out how we can shift our thoughts about this action of cutting back on this food so it feels joyful and it feels empowering versus restrictive. All right, and I'll put the other link for the masterclass. Again, the Stop Emotional Eating Masterclass is coming this Thursday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. It is going to be recorded, so even if you can't make it live, you can sign up for it and I'll send you the recording. But if you join live, you get to ask me all your questions, so you get a more personalized experience. So I'd love to see you there. And if not, I will see you next week for coffee chats. It's the same link, every link. So feel free to save the Zoom link. Otherwise, if you're on my email list, I always send out a reminder an hour before the Zoom link. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.